At Christmas, my mother-in-law looked at my 6-year-old and said, "Children from mommy's cheating don't get to call me grandma," right after rejecting the gift my daughter had proudly made for her. Then my son stood up and said this. The whole room went dead silent. I swear the entire living room stopped breathing. Even the cheap little porcelain angel on my mother-in-law's mantel looked like it wanted to cover its ears. And me? I just stood there like someone had unplugged my brain. My mouth opened, then closed, then opened again, like a goldfish experiencing emotional trauma. My 6-year-old daughter Mia didn't understand the words, not fully, but she understood the rejection. Her face crumpled like tissue paper left out in the rain. And that's when the dizziness hit me so hard I had to grab the back of a chair. Not because I thought I might fall. No, I needed the chair so I wouldn't grab my mother-in-law Sharon instead. Everything had been so normal a minute earlier. Or at least Sharon-level normal, which meant aggressively festive and deeply fake. Her tree twinkled. The cinnamon candles were fighting for dominance with the burnt ham smell from the kitchen. Presents were stacked like we were filming an ad for seasonal overspending. And of course, the favoritism had been flowing like boxed wine at a PTA mixer. Bella went first. My sister-in-law Melanie's daughter Bella, who was about the same age as my own kids, and very obviously the golden child of my in-laws. She handed my mother-in-law, Sharon, a mug she'd decorated at school, a lumpy, glitter-encrusted thing that looked like it needed immediate hospitalization. Sharon shrieked like she'd been handed the Holy Grail and immediately swept Bella into her arms while my father-in-law, Lawrence, clapped like an animatronic grandfather programmed for enthusiasm. Then my older son, Noah, handed over his gift, a simple drawing of him and Sharon sledding. She squealed again, smoothing his hair and telling him he was such a talented little artist. They gave him a box bigger than he was, and when he ripped it open, it was a remote control car with flashing lights and wheels that could apparently drive on walls or ceilings or outer space. Then it was Mia's turn. They'd given her a little plastic doll with hair so sparse it looked like it had survived a bleach accident. Sharon smiled at her in that thin, strained way she only used when she wished she were smiling at literally anyone else. But Mia didn't notice. She was too excited, too proud. My sweet girl had spent days working on her picture. She held it with both hands, beaming, eyes bright, bouncing in place like a puppy ready to be praised. She handed it over. And everything collapsed. Sharon took the picture, looked at it, looked at Mia, looked at me, and in the sweetest, most poisonous tone imaginable, she said the line that will echo in my skull until I die. "Children from mommy's cheating don't get to call me grandma, honey." I felt every word like a physical slap. Mia froze, like the sentence hit a kill switch inside her. Her mouth trembled, then her eyes filled. Then the first tear slid down, slow and heavy, the kind of tear a child cries when the world suddenly stops making sense. Lawrence shifted uncomfortably but said nothing. Melanie looked like she wanted to smile but knew better. "Thomas, wow." He looked like someone had shoved him underwater. His eyes were wide and stunned, his whole body rigid. He kept opening his mouth like he was going to speak, but no sound came out. And me? I was vibrating. Rage crawled up my spine in hot, electric waves. I felt it in my teeth, in my fingertips, in my pulse. But before I could speak, before I could unleash anything, Noah stood, my 8-year-old, the child they adored, the one who could do no wrong. He stood up so fast his chair scraped loud across the hardwood. Everyone flinched. He walked straight to Sharon, jaw clenched, eyes burning with something I had never seen in him before, something fierce and heartbreakingly adult. He reached out and snatched back the picture he'd given her earlier, the sledding one, the one she'd gushed over. He grabbed it with small, shaking fingers. Then he placed the giant remote control car, the perfect, expensive, adored gift, right back at her feet. The room gasped. Even Melanie blinked like someone had unplugged her, and then Noah said, voice steady but shaking at the edges, "If my sister can't call you Grandma, then neither will I." Silence. A thick, stunned, suffocating silence. Bella stared. Melanie's mouth fell open. Sharon reeled back like she'd been struck. Noah turned to Mia and took her hand, took it gently, like she was made of something precious. Then he looked at me and said, "Mom, can we go? I don't want to be here." It was not a question. It was a verdict. And suddenly, everything in me snapped into place. "Yes," I said. "We're leaving." Thomas stood too, slowly but with purpose. There was something in his face. Shame, maybe. Or dawning clarity. Or maybe just the realization that his mother had just burned a bridge he could never rebuild. No one stopped us. No one tried. We walked to the door, the four of us, holding on to each other like we were crossing a battlefield. And just as I reached for the handle, I had the sharp, sickening feeling that this was only the beginning, that the real explosion hadn't even started yet. A shadow fell across Sharon's face. Melanie's hand flew to her phone. Lawrence muttered something under his breath. Then we stepped out into the cold December air, and the door closed behind us like a loaded gun cocking. If you'd told me years ago that Sharon would one day accuse me of cheating in front of my 6-year-old, I wouldn't have believed you. Not because she wasn't capable, but because I didn't think the universe would ever be quite that on the nose. But here we are, and honestly, the signs were all there. I just kept telling myself they weren't. Let's start from the beginning. I met Thomas at a game night I wasn't even supposed to attend. I'd had a terrible day, the kind where you start aggressively rethinking every life choice you've ever made. And a friend talked me into going out. "There'll be food," she said. "Maybe someone cute." There was food. The cute part was debatable. I walked in and saw him, a tall, nervous-looking guy in a NASA t-shirt, sorting game pieces by color with the intensity of someone defusing a bomb. He looked up, pushed his glasses up his nose, and said, completely serious, "The probability distributions in this game heavily favor the starting player." Reader, he had me. Because underneath the awkward delivery and the statistics lecture, he was kind. He listened when I spoke. He cared about things deeply, just not in the performance-based way most people do. It was refreshing. He wasn't charming. He wasn't smooth. But he was earnest in a way that made you believe he meant every word he said. Unfortunately, he was raised by people who believed earnestness was a genetic defect. The first time he took me to meet his parents, Sharon opened the door and looked at me like I was an overdue library book she hadn't requested. "Oh," she said. "You're Emily." "Yes," I said. "And you're Sharon?" Her smile tightened. "You're shorter than I expected." "Right. Good. Off to an excellent start." Lawrence hovered behind her like a nervous pensioner waiting for permission to breathe. He shook my hand with all the confidence of a man who'd been trained to never initiate a thought. Inside, the house was a shrine to Thomas's academic excellence. Every wall had baby to PhD photos like they were documenting the evolution of an award-winning lab specimen. That dinner? One long interrogation disguised as polite conversation. "What do your parents do?" "What are you studying?" "Do you cook?" "Are you good with money?" "Thomas is very special, you know. He needs the right kind of wife." Under the table, Thomas squeezed my knee as if to say, "I know. Just endure." I endured. Barely. What I didn't know yet was that I was also auditioning to compete with his family for his wallet. I found out he was helping them financially completely by accident. One day early in our relationship, I walked past his laptop and saw a bank tab open. I wasn't snooping. My peripheral vision was simply doing its job. There it was, a recurring payment to his parents' mortgage company. "Why are you paying their mortgage?" I asked, because subtlety is not a skill I possess. He jumped. "It's not, I mean, they just need a little help." "Thomas," I said, "you're a grad student. You're one lab accident away from eating cereal for dinner." "I have a scholarship," he protested, "and the lab pays, and they really appreciate it." Spoiler, they did not. Then I noticed another line, a transfer to Melanie. "Why are you paying your sister?" "She's between jobs." Melanie is always between jobs. It's her natural habitat. I didn't fight it then. I told myself it was his money, his family, his choice. I also told myself it was temporary, which was adorable in hindsight. Fast forward. Thomas finishes his master's, enters a PhD program, works 70-hour weeks for the salary of a middle school babysitter, and still sends money home like he's sponsoring 2 ungrateful contestants on a game show. Then he gets a well-paid job in applied science, and I think, finally, breathing room. Instead, the requests escalate. Bella's special programs, Melanie's new degree, their parents' home repairs, a temporary monthly contribution that somehow lasts 3 years. Every time I brought it up, Thomas looked like I was asking him to abandon a wounded puppy. "They need help," he'd say. "We're doing okay." We were doing okay because we cut corners quietly while his parents enjoyed emergency upgrades to their bathroom. Then Noah was born, and everything else blurred for a while. My in-laws adored him instantly. "He looks just like Thomas," they kept saying. "Our genes are strong." Our, not mine. But I was too sleep-deprived to fight about pronouns. 2 years later, Mia arrived. As she moved out of that newborn haze and her features started to take shape, I began catching flashes of someone I hadn't seen in years. My late grandmother. The same gentle eyes, the same little half-smile, the same quiet softness in her face. It hit me in a way I wasn't prepared for. My grandmother had been the safest place in my childhood. Warm, steady, endlessly patient. Seeing pieces of her in Mia felt like getting a little bit of her back. When my mother-in-law first saw Mia, she frowned. "She doesn't look like Noah." "She looks like my grandmother," I said. "Oh," she replied, like I'd told her the baby was part alien. Well, hopefully she grows into the family. Like shoes. Or debt. Then the jokes started. "Are you sure she's his?" "We're just teasing. Relax. It's just funny Noah is Mini Thomas and Mia is... I don't know where she came from." "She looks like my grandmother," I said. Again. And again. And again. They squinted at the photos, shrugged, and kept implying I'd somehow recreated my grandmother using the mailman's DNA. As Mia got older, so did the cruelty. Little comments at birthdays, whispered snipes at family dinners. "She really doesn't look like our side." You might have to tell her the truth someday. The favoritism grew too. Noah got the big gifts, the praise, the special outings. Mia got the bargain bin afterthought every time. She noticed. She always noticed. Once, Noah got a cupcake with a superhero topper and twice the frosting. Mia got the sad economy version. Noah calmly transferred half his frosting to her plate and gave her the superhero. "There," he said. "Better." I had to pretend to look at my phone so I wouldn't cry in public. I tried telling Thomas. "It's not intentional," he said. Intentional or not, my daughter was learning she was less in that house. And on Christmas, she learned exactly how less Sharon thought she was. So yes, when Sharon shoved Mia's picture back at her and said, "Children from mommy's cheating don't get to call me grandma," I wasn't shocked. But I was done. And I had no idea the detonation she triggered was only the beginning. By the time we got home from Christmas, I thought I was emotionally tapped out. Turns out, I was wrong. I tucked Noah and Mia into our bed with a movie because I couldn't bear the thought of them being more than 6 feet away from me. Then I walked down the hall, fully expecting to find Thomas pacing, spiraling, or silently imploding. Instead, I found him sitting at his desk, still in his coat, lit up by the cold glow of the monitor, clicking buttons like he was dismantling a bomb. "Thomas?" I said carefully. "What are you doing?" He didn't even look up. "Fixing something." Which is exactly the tone a man uses right before he does something irreversible. I stepped behind him. My heartbeat did this dramatic, "oh no, no, no" percussion solo. His bank account was open. Recurring payments, transfers, auto payments I knew nothing about. Tabs with labels like mortgage contribution and Melanie monthly. And next to each one, cancel, cancel, cancel. One click, another click, another artery cut. "Wait." I grabbed the back of his chair. Are you canceling everything?" "Yes." That was it. One word. A guillotine of a syllable. "You mean your parents' mortgage? Your sister's stuff? Bella's?" "All of it." He still wasn't looking at me. His jaw was locked, shoulders stiff, like he'd been carved out of cold stone. My brain was frantically flipping through every version of Thomas I had ever known. Gentle, conflict-avoidant, apologetic Thomas. And none of them matched the man sitting here deleting payment methods like they owed him money. "This is sudden," I said, which was the understatement of the decade. He exhaled, finally leaning back in his chair. Not relaxed, just done. "You know what hit me tonight?" he said, voice low. "My 8-year-old did what I should have done." He finally looked up at me. His eyes were red, furious, ashamed. "It should have been me," he said. "I should have defended her. I should have said something. I let them talk about you for years. I let them talk around Mia. But tonight, they said it to her face and I froze." His voice cracked on froze. My stomach twisted. I wanted to grab him, reassure him, something, but he wasn't done. "Noah shouldn't have been the one to stand up for her," he said. "He shouldn't have felt like he had to. That's on me, and I'm not letting it happen again." He turned back to the screen and clicked another remove card. "You have no idea," he continued, "how many times I told myself it was helping them. How many times I thought it was temporary, that they'd appreciate it, that I was doing the right thing." His laugh was short and sharp. "They never saw me as helping them. They saw me as obligated, and tonight proved that." I sat on the edge of the desk because my legs weren't prepared for this kind of emotional earthquake. "So you're done?" I asked quietly. He nodded. "Done sacrificing our kids' experiences so my mother can tell Mia she's a mistake. Done paying Melanie's bills so she can mock my daughter's existence. Done being the wallet they kick whenever they're bored." I swallowed hard. "Thomas, they're going to explode." "Let them," he said. "They've been detonating on us for years." He hit one last confirm, and the page refreshed like he'd just exorcised a demon. And then, of course, his phone buzzed. He stared at it like someone had texted him the word boo from inside his closet. "My mom," he said. Of course, he answered and put it on speaker because apparently we were embracing transparency now. "Thomas!" she shrieked immediately. "We just got a notification that our mortgage payment method was removed. Did the bank screw something up? What is going on?" "No," he said calmly. "I removed it." Silence. Then a sound like she'd been dramatically slapped by invisible hands. "What do you mean you removed it?" she demanded. "You can't just... Your father is panicking." "You'll have to pay it yourselves," he said. "I'm not doing it anymore." "Are you kidding me? After everything we've done for you? We rely on that. We need that. I'm pretty sure my eyebrows hit the ceiling. Thomas didn't flinch. I have my own family to support. We are your family, she shrieked. This is because of her, isn't it? She's turning you against us. She's poisoning. Stop, he said. This isn't Emily. This is me. I could have kissed him. Right on the mouth. Right there in the middle of the room with his mom screaming on speakerphone like a malfunctioning fire alarm. You told my daughter, he continued, that she came from cheating. You shoved her gift back in her face. You humiliated her. Oh, please, Sharon snapped. She's 6. She'll forget. Maybe, he said, voice sharp. But Noah won't, and neither will I. Her voice went into full banshee mode. You're being dramatic. You're destroying this family. You already did, he said. You just didn't expect me to notice. He hung up. Hung up. Thomas, the man who once apologized to a telemarketer for not being interested, hung up on his mother. I stared at him. He stared at the floor. His shoulders were trembling. Before I could even make a comforting noise, the phone buzzed again. Melanie. Oh no, I muttered. Level 2. He answered. What the hell, Thomas? She snapped. Mom just called me crying. You cut her off? And me? How am I supposed to pay for Bella's classes? That's not my problem, he said. You can't do that, she shouted. All because Mom made a joke? She insulted my daughter, he said, and you backed her up. Oh, for crying out loud, Melanie groaned. It was funny. Everyone thinks Mia looks nothing like... Don't, he said. Don't finish that sentence. She did anyway. You don't even know if she's yours. The silence that followed was thick enough to choke on. That's it, he said. We're done. You're throwing away your family, she screamed. No, he said. I'm protecting mine. He hung up again, and then he leaned back, covered his face, and let out a breath that sounded like 6 years of holding everything in. I walked over and wrapped my arms around him. He didn't pull away. I'm proud of you, I whispered. He didn't speak for a moment, just breathed. And I knew, deep in my bones, that this wasn't the end. This was the fuse lighting. If there's one thing I've learned about people like Sharon, it's this. They don't lick their wounds. They sharpen their teeth. The smear campaign began less than 48 hours after Thomas cut them off. I was buttering toast for Mia when my phone buzzed with a message from a cousin I hadn't talked to in 2 years. Hey, are you okay? Your MIL posted something intense. That's never a good sentence to wake up to. I opened Facebook, and there it was, a full-length tragic monologue written by Sharon, complete with dramatic line breaks and a sepia-toned picture of her holding baby Thomas like he was a fallen soldier. According to her, she had lost her son to a manipulative woman, been cut off financially by force, been alienated from her grandson through brainwashing, and punished for speaking the truth everyone can see. Then came the stinger. We only ever expressed concern because Mia looks nothing like our family. We just wanted to protect our son. For that, we were exiled. And then, as if summoned by the devil's group chat itself, Melanie swooped into the comments like a Walmart brand hype woman. She's using him. He's blinded by love. This is what happens when you let the wrong woman take over. There were screenshots of Noah and Mia side by side with circles around their faces like they were evidence in a crime scene. My stomach turned. Emily? Thomas asked from behind me. He had that, tell me now before I punch a hole in the drywall tone. I showed him the screen. He stared for a long moment. His jaw dropped, then clenched, then did something that looked dangerously close to a spasm. They're telling people you cheated, he said. Yes, I said. Welcome to the Sharon experience, now with bonus public humiliation. He rubbed his face. People are actually agreeing with her. This is insane. Is it? I said. She's been practicing this narrative for years. This is just the first time she's had an audience. And then, as if the universe decided to spice things up, notifications started blowing up in real time. Wow, I always wondered. He should get a DNA test. Poor Thomas. She's obviously manipulating him. That little girl looks nothing like him, I'm just saying. My lungs felt too small. Thomas took the phone gently out of my hands and set it down before I threw it into the toaster. You don't deserve any of this, he said quietly. Just tell me what you want to do, and I'm with you. I took a breath. We're getting a DNA test. Let's end this circus. Mia didn't understand why someone swabbed the inside of her cheek, but Thomas explained it like it was a fun science club activity. Noah asked if he could get swabbed too. We told him maybe next time. Waiting for the results felt like holding my breath underwater, not because I doubted, never that, but because I knew what would happen when the truth hit daylight. And Sharon could not hide from daylight. While we waited, I went to my mother's house and pulled out the old photo boxes. My grandmother's face stared back at me from every angle, smiling, serious, laughing with the same soft eye crinkle Mia has when she's genuinely happy. The resemblance wasn't just uncanny. It felt like someone had stitched a piece of her into my daughter. And it was something Sharon would have known if she hadn't spent the last decade pretending my family didn't exist. When the DNA email came, I opened it sitting next to Thomas on the couch, my leg bouncing like a nervous rabbit. Probability of paternity, 99.9999%. I exhaled. I didn't realize I'd been holding my breath for that long. Congrats, I said dryly. You are, in fact, the father of the child you've been raising for 6 years. He snorted. Send it to me. We didn't respond to Sharon. We didn't comment on her post. We didn't tag or confront or message or argue. We simply made our own post. A collage, Mia smiling, Thomas holding baby Mia, a picture of my grandmother, a picture of Mia next to my grandmother, and our caption, for anyone who's heard the rumors, here are the facts. Mia is Thomas's biological child. DNA attached. She also looks exactly like Emily's grandmother, which is something you'd know if you'd ever bothered to learn her family instead of questioning her fidelity for years. Someone told our 6-year-old that she came from mommy's cheating and that she doesn't get to call her grandma. This was said directly to her face. That is why we cut contact. That is why financial support ended. You do not speak to a child that way and still get access to them. Thomas reposted the same thing with one extra paragraph. Since grad school, I've sent my parents and sister roughly $500 to $900 a month, whatever they asked for, whatever they said they couldn't cover. When I finally totaled all of it, it was $80,940. I have every transfer. And after all that, they accused my wife of cheating and told my daughter she isn't mine. We're done here. We hit post. Then we waited. For about 7 minutes, nothing happened. Then everything happened. The comments rolled in. I had no idea she said that to Mia. That's disgusting. Oh, wow. The resemblance to your grandmother is undeniable. I'm so sorry. No child deserves that. Honestly, good for you for cutting them off. And in the group chats? Silence. Then confusion. Then the quiet, satisfying crumble of people realizing they'd backed the wrong side. One cousin messaged me privately. I'm so sorry. I didn't know. I thought Sharon was exaggerating. This is awful. Another. She really said that to a 6-year-old? Not okay. Even better, Sharon had a big birthday coming up. One she'd been planning for months. Invitations had gone out to half the extended family, and one by one, everyone canceled. Sorry, can't make it. Not attending after what I heard. I'm uncomfortable supporting someone who talks to children that way. She ended up with an overpriced cake, an empty room, and Lawrence trying to pretend he liked being alone with her. I won't lie. I savored that image. But the real twist came later that week, in the form of a phone call from an unfamiliar number. "Is this Emily?" a voice asked. Older, sharper, polished. "Yes?" "This is Virginia," she said. "Thomas's aunt." I froze. We'd met twice. She was Sharon's older sister, 10 years wiser and 90 degrees less unhinged. "I saw the posts," she said. "I also got the unfiltered version from someone who actually has a spine." I didn't dare laugh, but I wanted to. "I just have one question," she continued. "Did Sharon really say that to your daughter?" "Yes," I said, right to her face. "And the $80,000? "Accurate." I heard a long exhale. "Well," she said, her voice turning crisp, "then I've made a decision." My heart did a weird little kick. "What kind of decision?" "The kind that involves lawyers," she said. "And wills." I gripped the counter. "I've removed my sister," she continued. "Every cent she was expecting is now going to Thomas and the children. I've also established a trust fund that begins paying out immediately. I'd rather see my money help a family with integrity than reward cruelty." I didn't speak. I couldn't. "And before you worry," she added, "this is not charity. This is justice. Your children deserve better than to grow up under the shadow of Sharon's bitterness." When I hung up, I stood there for a long moment, stunned, my heart pounding in my throat. Thomas walked in. "Who was that?" "Your aunt," I said. "You're going to want to sit down." Because suddenly, for the first time in years, the balance of power shifted. Not because we fought harder, not because we screamed louder, but because someone finally saw the truth and decided enough was enough. And the best part? Sharon couldn't blame me for this one. She did it to herself. 6 months later, and the silence is still blissful. My in-laws? Not so blissful. Once Thomas cut the financial cord, they spiraled fast. They had to sell their house, downsize, and, according to one cousin, finally admit that maybe relying on a future inheritance wasn't a retirement plan. Especially since that inheritance went to us. Thomas's aunt, the one with the late millionaire husband, she rewrote her will the same week the drama blew up. Turns out the substantial money Sharon counted on her entire life now sits in a trust for our kids. And a very generous chunk for us, too. Meanwhile, we've started traveling, living easily for the first time ever. So what do you think? Too far? Or not far enough? Let me know in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe. My 8-year-old daughter proudly gave my MIL her spelling bee certificate and said she wanted to show her first. My MIL replied, "You think you can buy my love with that?" Then she tore it into pieces and threw it in the trash. My older daughter got up and said this, and the whole room went silent. Christmas at my in-laws' house always feels like stepping into a place where everyone is pretending nothing is wrong. Too bright, too cheerful, too tightly wound. The kind of atmosphere where one wrong move might crack the whole night open. My 8-year-old daughter, Ella, stood close to me, holding her spelling bee certificate as if it were something precious she'd been saving for the right moment. And then, Ella stepped forward. She held her spelling bee certificate with both hands, gripping it so tightly the edges curled a little. Her cheeks were pink, not from the cold but from excitement. She had been waiting all week for this moment. "Grandma," she said, voice small but bright, "I wanted to show you this first." My mother-in-law Diane took the paper between 2 fingers, like she was accepting a parking citation. Her face didn't move at first. Just one slow inhale through her nose, one slow exhale out of her mouth, and then her lips tightened into that knife-thin line I've come to recognize as, Diane is about to ruin the vibe for sport. You think you can buy my love with that? Ella blinked. I blinked. The room blinked. And then Diane tore the certificate clean in half, then in half again, and again, slow, deliberate, like she was doing origami with my daughter's confidence. She dropped the pieces straight into the trash can beside her chair without even looking at it, like the entire moment bored her. Silence detonated. I felt it in my teeth, in my spine, in the back of my skull. Ella just stared at the trash. 1 second confused. The next, her little face folded inward. Her mouth trembled. Her eyes went shiny with that stubborn blinking kids do when they're trying not to cry in public. The room froze. Not loudly, not dramatically. Worse, quietly. Like everyone had silently agreed to pretend nothing awful had just happened. Melissa, my sister-in-law, smoothed her dress and gave a small, satisfied smile, like this was the outcome she'd been hoping for. Bella, Melissa's daughter and Diane's favorite grandchild, watched with bright curiosity, almost pleased, as if Ella's humiliation kept the family hierarchy intact. Raymond, my father-in-law, stared down at his hands, shrinking into his chair like he was trying to disappear into the upholstery. Eric, my husband, stood stiff beside me, pale and stunned, completely frozen. And no one said a thing. Not one adult stepped in. Not one person asked Ella if she was okay. The silence dragged, thick and shameful. And then Hannah moved. Her chair scraped back sharply, the sound slicing through the room. My 11-year-old stood up, slow but steady, shoulders tight, eyes burning. She walked straight to Ella and put herself between her sister and the trash can. Her voice shook, but it carried, "Why would you do that? She's 8. Good grandmas don't do that." And just like that, the silence turned into something alive, heavy, cold, impossible to ignore. Diane's eyes went wide, like she genuinely could not comprehend being confronted by a child. "How dare you?" she snapped. But Hannah didn't flinch, not even a breath. "How dare you? You hurt my sister." You could practically hear jaws dropping. Someone gasped softly. Someone else looked anywhere except at us. Even the Christmas tree lights seemed to dim for dramatic effect. My husband still stood completely frozen beside me, mouth slightly open, eyes locked on the scene like he was watching a car crash in slow motion. He didn't move, didn't speak, didn't even blink. And maybe that's when something inside me quietly shattered. I looked at Diane, who muttered just loud enough for everyone to hear, "Kids today are too full of themselves," as if she hadn't just emotionally body-slammed an 8-year-old. No apology, no hesitation, no shame. Nothing but that familiar superior squint. That was it. The point of no return. "We're leaving," I said. My voice didn't shake. It didn't rise. It didn't hesitate. It was cold, flat, and final. Hannah reached for Ella's hand instantly, gripping it with a protectiveness that made my chest ache. Ella clung to her, head bowed, shoulders shaking just slightly. We grabbed our coats in absolute silence. No one tried to stop us. No one tried to explain. No one offered comfort. They just sat there like mannequins in festive sweaters, eyes darting, guilt simmering, but mouths shut tight. And maybe that was the worst part. Not just what Diane did, but that everyone watched a child get crushed and decided to do nothing. We stepped out onto the porch. The winter air hit my skin sharp and clean, like a slap back into reality. Behind us, the house glowed warm and bright, a pretty little snow globe full of things pretending not to be broken. I shut the door slowly, deliberately, like sealing off a crime scene. And as the latch clicked, one truth settled deep in my bones. This wasn't random. This wasn't sudden. This wasn't a misunderstanding. This was the moment everything finally snapped open. And something told me the real explosion was still coming. If you'd asked me 5 years ago whether Diane would ever tear up one of my daughter's certificates, I probably would have laughed and said something naive like, "No way, she's just a little intense." Yeah, turns out intense was the warm-up act. Because what happened on Christmas wasn't random. It was the grand finale of a routine Diane has been perfecting for years. A routine I kept trying not to see. Let me back up. When I first met Eric, I knew 2 things about him. He was kind in a way that felt rare. He apologized for things that didn't require apologies, like stepping too close to a lamp or breathing near his mother. I should have connected the dots sooner. The first real red flag came long before kids. I mentioned something about finishing top of my class in college, and Diane's reaction was so flat you could have used it as a level tool. "Oh," she said. "One of those high-achieving types." Not mean, not sarcastic, just judgment wrapped in a polite tone, like academic success was a moral flaw. At the time, I shrugged it off. People are allowed to have weird opinions. Then Bella was born, and suddenly Diane became a walking parade float of pride and praise. Anything Bella touched turned into a miracle. A wobbly drawing? Artistic. A half-finished worksheet? Brilliant effort. A participation ribbon? You should all be so jealous. Bella isn't a bad kid. Let me say that clearly. She's sweet in her own way, but she's not academically driven, and school isn't her strongest place. That's fine. Truly. Not every child needs to be a spelling champion. But Bella was Diane's everything. The perfect little princess who, in Diane's mind, needed constant protection from anything that might make her feel second best. Then Ella came along. Ella, who genuinely loves learning. Ella, who reads books for fun. Ella, who remembers things like she was born with a filing system in her brain. Ella, who brought home real achievements. Spelling certificates, reading awards, little notes from teachers saying, "She's doing so well." And every time Ella succeeded, Diane's face did this weird little twitch. A tight smile, a stiff nod, a quick subject change. Almost like she couldn't digest the fact that someone other than Bella had done something notable. Meanwhile, when Bella brought something to show, anything at all, Diane reacted like someone had handed her a Nobel Prize. At first, I tried to explain it away. "Oh, she's just excited to be a grandma." "Oh, she just expresses things differently." "Oh, maybe she's tired." But Hannah, my observant, quiet Hannah, saw through it instantly. "Grandma only likes when we show her stuff if it's small," she told me once. "If it's something good, she gets weird." I remember staring at her, wanting to argue, but knowing she was right. And then came the moment when all the half-formed suspicions snapped together. It was a few months before Christmas. Ella had just won a class award. Not a huge competition, just a genuine accomplishment she'd worked for. She brought it to show Diane during a visit. Diane glanced at it, forced a tiny smile, and pulled me aside later. "You should tell her not to go around flaunting these things. It can hurt other kids' feelings." I blinked. What other kids? Diane's eyes flicked directly to Bella, then back to me. "I mean, any child who doesn't have it as easy as she does," she snapped, suddenly irritated. And there it was, the truth she'd been dancing around. Diane interpreted Ella's achievements as attacks on Bella. Not bragging, not arrogance, not pride, just existing. Just being good at something. Just outshining Bella by accident. From that point forward, everything clicked. When Bella had a small moment and Ella had a bigger one, Diane got cold. When Ella brought home something impressive, Diane dismissed it as showing off. When Bella managed something small, Diane acted like she'd earned a scholarship to Harvard. It wasn't about humility. It wasn't about values. It was about hierarchy. And Ella was climbing too high for Diane's comfort. Hannah saw all of it. Before Ella even understood what was happening, Hannah had already stopped showing Diane her own school achievements. "She doesn't like it," she said. "She's nicer when I pretend I didn't do anything." That sentence broke me a little. And then, there's the money. Eric had been helping Diane and Melissa financially for years. Quietly, consistently, guiltily. It started with a temporary loan, then a bill here, a repair there, and eventually regular monthly transfers that Diane treated like a salary she'd earned simply by existing. Whenever I questioned it, Eric would fold inward. "She raised us," he'd say. "She struggled. She needs help." And maybe she did. But it didn't take long to notice that Diane talked about compassion like it was a one-way street pointing directly at her. And the more stable our household became, the more Diane looked at Ella's achievements not as something to be proud of, but as something to resent. She wasn't protecting Bella's feelings. She was protecting her own fantasy. Bella on top, always. Ella beneath her, always. So when Ella stepped forward on Christmas, thrilled, hopeful, proud, Diane didn't see a child trying to share a special moment. She saw a threat. And she did what she always does when she feels threatened. She cut the problem down to size, and Christmas was just the moment she stopped hiding it. Because the truth was, we were standing on a landmine for years. Diane just finally stepped on it hard enough for it to explode. And none of us had any idea how much bigger that explosion was going to get. By the time we got home from Diane's Christmas circus, I thought I was done feeling anything. I was wrong. Ella went straight to the couch without a word, still clutching the torn pieces of her spelling bee certificate like they were bits of her heart. Hannah sat down right next to her, wrapping an arm around her shoulders, eyes fixed on the floor. She looked like a bodyguard who had just realized the person she was guarding needed protection from their own family. "I'll put on a movie," I heard myself say, because apparently my brain had switched into emergency mom mode. "Something cozy. Okay?" Ella nodded without looking up. Hannah gave me that brief, tight glance that said, "I see everything," and I'm trying not to cry in front of her. I turned on some animated thing none of us were really going to watch, then walked to the kitchen on legs that felt like they'd been hastily installed by a discount mechanic. My hands shook while I reached for the cocoa mix. It wasn't just nerves. It was rage. Thick, hot, crawling up my spine rage. I poured milk into a pot. The second the stove clicked on behind me, I felt Eric step into the doorway. "Megan," he started. And that was it. That was the spark. "She tore up her spelling bee certificate," I snapped, spinning around to face him. "In front of everyone. She humiliated her." My voice came out sharper than I intended, but I didn't care. Someone needed to say the words out loud. Someone needed to actually look at this thing instead of shoving it into the Diane being Diane drawer. Eric flinched like I'd thrown something at him. "I know," he said softly. His face was pale, his eyes glassy. "I know. You just what?" I demanded. "You just stood there. You watched her tear it up like it was trash. Ella looked at you. I looked at you. And you did nothing." His shoulders sagged. He sank into a chair at the kitchen table like his knees had given out. "I froze," he whispered. "Like I always froze." The worst part? He wasn't being dramatic. He put his elbows on the table and rubbed his hands over his face. When he finally looked up, something was cracked open behind his eyes. "She used to do the same to me," he said. I leaned back against the counter, the spoon in my hand forgotten, cocoa bubbling too fast on the stove. "What do you mean?" I asked. I knew, but I needed him to say it. needed him to hear himself say it. He gave a bitter half laugh. "You know how she always tells everyone I was so smart growing up," he said. "Funny how she leaves out the part where she hated it." He started talking, fast, like someone had turned a valve. "Anytime I used a big word, she'd say, 'Don't try to sound smarter than people.' If I got a good grade, she'd say, 'Stop bragging, you'll make your sister feel bad.' I brought home an award once, just a little academic thing. She rolled her eyes and told me to put it away before company came so I didn't show off." My throat tightened. "I thought it was discipline," he continued. "I thought she was keeping me grounded. I spent my entire childhood thinking I was the problem for being proud of myself." He stared down at his hands. "But tonight, when she did it to Ella, it was like watching my own childhood get replayed. Except this time it wasn't me. It was my kid." Something in his expression shifted. The guilt was still there, but it had teeth now. He stood up so fast his chair jolted backward. "I'm done," he said. "I'm not letting her do this again. Not to them." Before I could ask what done meant, he was already moving. Out of the kitchen, down the hall, into the small office we barely used except for taxes and stressing about bills once a month. I turned the stove off and followed. By the time I reached the doorway, Eric was already at his desk, laptop open, fingers flying. On the screen, his bank account. Rows of transactions. A familiar name showing up over and over. Transfers to Diane. Payments to cover emergencies. Money sent to help Melissa until things settled. All those times he'd said, "She just needs a little help right now." All those times I'd let it slide because I didn't want to be the bad guy. "I've been paying her to treat our kids like they're beneath her," he said quietly. He clicked on a recurring payment labeled something like Mom, Utilities, Cancel, Confirm. Another one, Mom, Credit Card, Cancel, Confirm. "Eric," I whispered, my heart doing cartwheels. "Are you sure you want to do this right now?" He didn't even look at me. "I should have done it a long time ago," he said. "If she thinks she owns me because I help her, she's wrong. I'm not paying her to hurt our kid." Click, click, click. Each one felt like cutting a cord I hadn't realized was wrapped around all our necks. I didn't stop him. I didn't try. And then it happened. His phone buzzed on the desk, screen lighting up with a name that made my stomach flip. Diane. He stared at it for a heartbeat. Then he picked it up and hit speaker. "What did you do?" she shrieked. No hello, no preamble. "My card just got declined at the store. Are you trying to embarrass me?" "I stopped paying your bills," Eric said calmly. You could almost hear her inhale. "What do you mean, you stopped?" she demanded. "You can't just stop. After everything I've done for you, you're really going to do this to your own mother because your precious little girl got her feelings hurt." I pressed my lips together so hard they hurt. "She was proud," Eric said. "You tore up something she worked for, in front of everyone. You embarrassed her." "She needed a lesson," Diane snapped. "She struts around like she's better than Bella, and she is not. Someone has to keep her in check." My stomach dropped. There it was, out loud. No more pretending. Eric's jaw clenched. When he spoke again, his voice was low, deadly calm. "You don't get to hurt my daughter to protect someone else's feelings." "You're letting Megan turn you against your own blood!" Diane screamed. "You're choosing them over me!" He didn't yell. He didn't argue. He just ended the call, hung up, on his mother. If I hadn't seen it with my own eyes, I wouldn't have believed it. I barely had time to exhale before the phone buzzed again. Eric checked the screen. "Melissa," he said, already tired. He answered and set it back on the desk. "What did you do to Mom?" Melissa snapped. She's crying. You cut her off? Over what? Because Ella couldn't handle being told no? She wasn't told no, Eric said. Mom tore up her certificate. She humiliated her. Oh, please, Melissa groaned. It's not that serious. Your kid embarrasses Bella all the time with that trophy stuff. She needed to learn she's not the star of this family. I felt my heart stop for a second. I heard my own voice, barely above a whisper. Did she just say that? Eric's hand tightened into a fist. So you admit it, he said. You think Ella should shrink so your kid doesn't feel insecure. Well, yeah, Melissa shot back. It's not fair when she acts like she's better than everyone. You let her show off and then Mom gets blamed for trying to keep some balance. There it was. No disguises, no sugarcoating, just raw, ugly truth. Eric's voice shook, but he didn't back down. If you talk about my daughter like that again, he said, we're done. You're throwing away your family, Melissa screamed. I'm protecting mine, he said, and he hung up. Again. For a long moment, the only sound in the room was both of us breathing like we'd just run a marathon through fire. Down the hall, the movie hummed faintly. Someone laughed on the TV. Ella didn't. Hannah stood in the doorway, arms wrapped around herself. She'd heard enough. You could see it in her eyes. Are we ever going back there? She asked quietly. Eric looked at her, really looked at her, like he was seeing her for the first time in years instead of seeing whatever Diane wanted him to see. No, he said. Not after this. Hannah nodded once, like a verdict had been handed down. Ella appeared behind her, eyes puffy, clutching the taped-together scraps of her certificate. Why doesn't Grandma like when I do good things? She asked. That single sentence hurt more than anything Diane had said all night. I crouched down in front of her. Baby, I said, some people feel small inside, and instead of fixing that, they hurt other people who shine. That's not your fault. You did nothing wrong. You're allowed to be proud of yourself. Eric knelt beside us, tears finally spilling over. He took both girls into his arms like he was hanging on to a life raft. No one is ever going to tear up your achievements again, he said. Not while I'm here. I promise. And for the first time that day, I believed him. What I didn't know yet was that the ripple from those 2 phone calls was about to hit Diane harder than she ever imagined. If I'd thought the Christmas meltdown and the 2 nuclear phone calls were the end of it, I was adorably naive. Like, believes the dryer eats socks, naive. Diane wasn't done. Of course she wasn't done. Women like Diane don't lick their wounds. They host a press conference. 2 days after we cut her off, I woke up to 9 messages from relatives I barely speak to. Have you seen what your MIL posted? You okay? Wow. Nothing good ever starts with, have you seen what she posted? I opened Facebook. There she was. Diane had written a full-blown manifesto, long enough to qualify as a college admission essay, accompanied by a picture of herself standing beside her Christmas tree, looking like the patron saint of suffering mothers. According to Diane, I was raising arrogant children who think trophies make them better than family. Ella had shoved her certificate in everyone's faces. And my personal favorite, Diane had gently corrected her. And that was what caused an explosive overreaction orchestrated by Megan. I actually snorted out loud. Ella couldn't shove anything in anyone's face if you paid her in unicorn stickers. There was no mention of tearing or trash cans, or the fact that the gentle correction was actually a complete humiliation. And then Melissa entered the battlefield. She commented under the post like she was Diane's personal hype woman. Ella always acts superior. Some kids need to be humbled. Mom was just teaching her manners. I nearly dropped my phone. Some kids need to be humbled? I resisted the urge to write, yes, some adults need to be jailed. And then, because apparently she was committed to the role, Melissa posted a second comment implying Bella had been bullied by the constant showing off. Bullied by an 8-year-old holding a certificate. I sat down on the edge of my bed, dizzy with a mixture of rage, disbelief, and that horrible second-hand embarrassment you get when someone publicly humiliates themselves with full confidence. Eric came in, hair still a mess from sleep. You saw it? Oh, I saw it, I said. I also saw Melissa auditioning for the role of Worst Human 2024. He took my phone, read in silence. His jaw tensed. His eyes hardened. And then he handed it back to me like it was covered in poison. We're responding, he said. My stomach flipped. I wasn't sure if it was fear or adrenaline. Are you sure? I asked. I mean, they're already making fools of themselves. They're lying about our kid, he said. We're done letting them control the narrative. I nodded. He was right. I hated that he was right. But he was. We sat together on the couch, the same couch where Ella had cried 2 nights earlier, and wrote out a post. It was short, calm, factual. The opposite of Diane's essay-length tantrum. 2 days ago, Ella showed her grandmother a spelling bee certificate she was proud of. Her grandmother tore it into pieces and threw it in the trash. This wasn't the first time she dismissed or mocked our children's achievements. We're choosing to step back from that side of the family. We attached a photo of Ella's certificate taped back together, screenshots of Diane's texts. Knock her down a peg. Don't let her steal attention from Bella. She needs to stay humble for everyone's sake. We didn't add anything dramatic. We didn't accuse anyone of crimes. We let the truth speak for itself. And the truth? It's loud. Comments started pouring in like someone had opened a floodgate. Wait, she tore it up? Who does that to a child? I thought Ella was bragging. I feel awful now. This is so toxic. Someone I didn't even know wrote, I'm sorry. My grandfather used to do something similar. It stays with you. Then came the one that changed everything. She did the same to me when I won an award in high school. I never forgot it. A cousin of Eric's. Someone who had always stayed neutral. Suddenly, the entire comment section flipped. People deleted their earlier support for Diane. Someone asked Melissa if she was proud of defending a grown woman tearing up a child's certificate. Melissa did not respond. She didn't post for the rest of the day. Diane went silent, which was honestly terrifying. Like the quiet before a storm, or a lawsuit, or Diane showing up at my house with a megaphone. But instead, the phone rang. Not Diane, not Melissa. Richard, Eric's uncle, the one who barely speaks, rarely visits, and has the emotional presence of a stone statue in a bank lobby. If he calls, something is happening. Eric answered on speaker. I saw the posts, Richard said. His voice was calm, steady, unsettling. And I talked to several people. Oh, Eric said, eyes widening. Okay. This has gone on long enough, Richard continued. Your mother has been taking money from all of us for years. My jaw dropped. All of us? Excuse me? Richard didn't even pause. She's not getting another $1, he said. Not from me. Not from you. Not from anyone she's been leaning on. Before we could breathe, before either of us could process those words, he dropped the bomb. I already moved the money I was sending her every month into 2 education funds. One for Ella, one for Hannah. My mouth went dry. They'll each have a full start for college or whatever programs they want, he said. It's done. I had to sit down. My legs were not prepared for billionaire uncle energy, even if he wasn't technically a billionaire. Richard, Eric breathed. That's A lot. That's called accountability, Richard said. I'd rather invest in kids who work hard than in someone who tears up their achievements. And just like that, he hung up. Eric and I stared at each other, stunned into silence. Then Eric let out a breath that sounded like he'd been holding it for a decade. Of course Diane found out. Of course she did. She started calling everyone in the family, shrieking that I had stolen her future, that Eric had abandoned his own mother, that Richard had lost his mind. This time, nobody defended her. Not one person. Melissa deactivated her Facebook account. Raymond reportedly told someone he was too old for this nonsense. And Diane? She went quiet again. Not peaceful quiet. Storm brewing quiet. But honestly, I didn't care. Because that night, Ella hung a new certificate on her bedroom wall. Not taped together, not torn, not waiting for approval that was never going to come. Hannah hugged her and said, "See? This is how it's supposed to be." Eric stood in the doorway, eyes glassy but proud. I watched them and felt something strange settle in my chest. Not victory, not relief. Something steadier. A line drawn. A door shut. A cycle broken. Diane tried to make my daughter smaller. All she did was show us exactly how tall we could stand. So what do you think? Did we go too far or not far enough? Let me know in the comments and subscribe for more.